Tommy James.
Can you hang on a second? Because I seriously have to pinch myself. Cannot believe this is happening. No, and I'm dead serious. So first of all, Tommy, thank you for.
Is this Mike?
It is. Thank you. Either that, or we're trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. But I do want to seriously thank you and thank Carol for making time.
Sure.
I appreciate that. And let me be at least maybe the very first person from, I guess, New England to say Merry Christmas and welcome to the program.
And Merry Christmas to you.
Oh, thank you so very much. You are now officially, at least for a while, off the road, home for the holidays. And may I assume you're in your happy place?
Well, that's right. I get a month and a half now. We start again touring in February, and there's just a lot going on, and I'm thankful to have a lot going on, but it is the point where I'm going to be resting a little bit for about 6 weeks.
Oh, as you should. So you have a million stories, a few of which we will get to this evening. But I too have a story, and it is a Tommy James story. So it's really not that bad. I will take you back to maybe 1975, Grand Forks, North Dakota. And to be honest, neither one of us probably wanted to be there. And you had just finished a show across town. I don't remember how we worked this out, but you stopped by the radio station to do an interview. You were very, very kind. Now I don't know, I'm probably 22 years old, and I thought I'll just wing this. Tommy's going to stop by. I hadn't really prepared any questions. And you were very gracious. And so when I asked you a question, you were just giving me like 1- and 2-word answers, and then just kind of like a cat playing with a mouse. You know what I mean? And you just kind of looked at me and smiled and went like, "Your turn. It's your turn." So somehow...
Oh, boy. Well, we got to stop meeting like this.
Somehow we got through that. And now we jump to, you said, listen, maybe you felt sorry for me. And you said, hey, I'm staying out the Holiday Inn. Why don't you come out? So I went out. We had a couple of beverages. And I have a photograph. I guess we were playing pinball. And then somehow, some way, there was this after party that went to, God, I don't know, I want to say maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. We had stamina back then, but here's what
50 years ago, yes, we did.
Here's the magical moment I remember: sitting one-on-one with you, talking about your music, how it happened, how it created, talking about the Bible, talking about Revelations, and the sun comes up, and I'm not sure I fully appreciated the moment when it was happening, but thank you so much, because it's a huge memory for me now.
Well, that sounds great. I saw the picture you sent of that night.
Oh.
And, boy, that was a long time ago.
When I had hair and you had curls in your hair, so
right. That's right.
I'm just gonna listen. Unless you've been living under a rock, you clearly know the prowess of Tommy James. Just gonna hit a couple of highlights here first. Well documented background: 23 gold singles. Oh my God, 100 million albums. Tommy has sold 9 platinum albums. And with all that success, Tommy, you have truly made it when your home state, New Jersey, puts a life-size hologram of you in the Newark Airport Terminal C, by the way, boys and girls. And
yes, that was really wonderful, I must tell you. I really did appreciate that. And never in a million years did I think, when I was recording Hanky Panky, or, when I was first starting out, did I think I would be still doing this in the year 2025. But that's where it's going. And I am just so blessed and grateful to be doing it this long. I thank the good Lord and the fans for the kind of longevity we've had. I must say that it's just, I look out at our concert crowd now, and I literally see 3 generations of people.
You're absolutely
It's almost
right.
a religious experience. I'm telling you, it's just an amazing thing to see. And, of course, so many things are going on now. We're doing a movie. I'm doing Sirius XM, a radio show on Sirius XM every week.
Yep.
And, you know, we have our own record company. We put out products whenever we want to. And, you know, the fans are like extended family at this point in my career. And I just am literally so thankful to be doing it this long.
You know what? You are completely destroying my notes here. Kind of back to 1970. No. I absolutely love it. But when I say that, I mean, I'm going to jump ahead and tell you that you've been doing this 5 decades. I swear to God, if anyone looks at the most recent video on YouTube, you sound. I don't want this to sound not like a compliment. You sound as good, if not better, than back in the day, whatever the day was. You literally,
thank you.
I absolutely killing it.
I've been very lucky that, to have stayed healthy this long, and also to have kept my voice in shape. And it comes from not overdoing it. We work once a week, sometimes twice, but usually once a week during concert season, and that way I don't destroy my voice. The show we do is so high energy, I don't think I could do it 2 days in a row. I don't think I want to, but I must say I love performing. Traveling is sort of a drag. I mean, you get your fill of airplanes, and
sure.
I'm not a big airplane fan to begin with, but flying today is such a challenge. You don't know if you're ever going to come home. With the schedules and the delays and all the stuff that goes on. But I dearly love performing, and I love mixing it up with the fans. So that's all fun stuff to me.
And you can't go anywhere. I swear it was maybe 3-4 weeks ago. I want to say Instagram, where you were accosted by fans for autographs. And I want to say it was in Iowa. So we can't take you anywhere.
Well, yeah, and it's a great. I'm very flattered. I really am that the fans are like they are, because they're, like I said, they're almost like extended family now, and it makes me feel good. We're
going to do the speed round through your life. Age 3, you're playing ukulele. True?
That's right. I got a ukulele as a Christmas present from my grandfather, and I just started singing and playing. My mother used to say when I was an infant that the only way she could shut me up, that she could stop me from crying, was just turn on the radio, and I would immediately shut up and listen. It seems I've always wanted to do music. I never really had anything else that I truly wanted to do. I started, as you say, when I was 3 playing the ukulele, and my mom bought me records, and I would learn them, sing them, and play the uke to back up my singing. And then when I was 9, I got a guitar. I saw Elvis on TV on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was it. The ukulele went out the window. And I got my first, I begged my mom for an acoustic guitar, and she got me one, God bless her. And, that's how it started. And the next year, when I was 10, I got my first electric guitar. And, of course, rock and roll really had started at that moment, American Bandstand, and, rock on the radio full time. And in the late 50s, and I learned everything I could, had a stack of records by the time I was 10 years old, and I'm learning them and teaching myself how to play guitar. So that's where it started.
So ukulele at 3, you kind of skipped over child model at age 4.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah, that's right. Well, my mother had insisted I do piano lessons, and so she put me in this school. They called it a conservatory. That's a fancy name for piano school.
It's a fancy name for higher rates for piano lessons.
So I was about 5 years old then, and I got spotted we're doing a little concert for the parents, and I got spotted by the fellow that was there, who is the father of one of the other students, and was an advertising agent, and he worked for B.F. Goodrich and U.S. Rubber, and they were doing a campaign at that time to make for Life magazine, and I was chosen. I was to be there was a family in the advertising in the magazine.
Sure.
And they were going to make this still shot come to life. And so I was chosen to be the little kid with rubber boots on, and it was my first time up in front of an audience, a big audience, and all I remember was it was way past my bedtime. I was too tired. But it got me up in front. I've apparently liked it because
of course.
I kept going after that. Anyway, yeah, that's what happened when I was 5.
So you are playing the guitar at 9, 13. You're in a band.
That's true. Started it when I was 12 in my little hometown of Niles, Michigan. We called ourselves Tornadoes.
I remember.
Humble little characters, weren't we?
Yes.
And we sort of developed a little following. I played my first money date, my first gig for actual money when I was 13, and I felt so professional. We played at the bar at the American Legion, and I don't know how I talked my mom into letting me play in a bar when I was 13, but I did. And we kept the band together, and we played around town, any place that would have us, dances and stuff. And when I was 14, I got a job at the record shop, the local record store in Niles, Michigan, the Spin It Record Shop.
Bingo.
And so they let me promote my band out of the record shop, and so that was great. But I learned the trade papers, I learned the record labels, I learned the writers, the publishers, the producers, all the things involved in retail and the record business, and that was just the good Lord looking out for me, because it was like going to college.
It is.
And I got to promote my band, and I got my first record deal out of that record shop when I was 14.
That's unbelievable.
It's true. I was one of the distributors that would come in every week and deliver new records. Had a little label, and had a record store in Michigan that, these distributors were like, it was like a paper route almost. He would deliver records in a van. He would go from Chicago out to Hastings, Michigan, like a paper route, and deliver product to all of the mom and pop stores. So we were one of them, and I got to talking with him, and he said, would you like to come up and record? And I said, hell yes.
Sign me up.
His big claim to fame, by the way, was he turned down Del Shannon.
Oh, my God. Genius.
Yes. So, at any rate, we recorded a few sides. He put out records, a little label called Northway Sound, and I recorded a song called Judy, and the other side was Long Ponytail. And it was a cover of the Fireballs record. And we had it out, and we sold a few thousand of them and got on the jukeboxes in Michigan and northern Indiana. And so, the record kind of came and went, and I got older, and I basically started playing all over Michigan. And I'm sorry to be so long-winded.
No, my God, I absolutely love it. Thank you. I do.
Okay, well, I'm giving
Talk all night.
I am long-winded.
No, it's good.
But at any rate, so when I was 15, one of the local DJs in town who bought records at our record store was starting a little label called Snap Records. And he was a disc jockey on WNIL.
Oh, yeah.
The local station in Niles. He asked if we would come and make some records for him. And so we did, and one of the 4 records that we made for him was Hanky Panky, which ended up being our first hit record, the original recording.
My baby does the hanky panky. My baby does the hanky panky. My baby does the hanky panky. saw her walking on down the line. Yeah, you know I saw her for the very first time. A pretty little girl standing all alone. Baby, can I take you home? I never saw her, never saw her. My baby does the hanky panky. Yeah, my baby does the hanky panky. 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 Let's work it out. Let's go. I saw her walking on down the line. Yeah, you know I saw her for the very first time. A pretty little girl standing all alone. Hey, pretty baby, can I take you home? I never saw her, never saw her. Get real low in time now, wait on. Hey, my baby does the hanky panky. Yeah, my baby does the hanky panky. 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 Let's knock him dead one time. Let's go. My baby does the hanky panky. My baby does the hanky panky. Yeah, my baby does the hanky panky.
Now that song in particular, you have many. We could talk all night. We really could. That has kind of an interesting background of
Sure does.
of bootleg copies and
Yeah.
and record labels offering in a line to sign you and then recanting those offers. And tell me about that.
Okay. Well, just so you know, Hanky Panky kind of was put out originally when I was 16 years old, and it boosted us up a little bit, but we had no distribution, so it just kind of died after a certain period of time. And then when I was a senior, of course, I graduated in 1965, and we had, by the way, changed our name to the Shondells.
Yep.
And I graduated in 65, took my band on the road, and we played clubs in the Midwest. And we got an agent in Chicago, and so right out of high school, I went on the road for almost a year and played clubs all throughout the Midwest. And in early 66, about April of 66, we're playing a dumpy little club in Wisconsin. And right in the middle of my 2 weeks, the guy gets shut down by the IRS for not paying his taxes.
Oh, no.
So we got our equipment, thank God. We just in the nick of time and drove back home to Michigan and feeling like total losers. But that's how the good Lord works, because as soon as I got home, I got a call from Pittsburgh that this fluky record, Hanky Panky, that I had recorded 2.5 years earlier, was sitting at #1 in the city of Pittsburgh. Only in America, Mike. True story. And the guy finally convinced me. He was telling me the truth. He was a distributor from Fenway Distributors in Pittsburgh. Somehow they had been rifling through an old record bin, and in Pittsburgh, they at that time, they had a sort of an underground record market, and they would bootleg. They'd find obscure records that nobody wanted, and they'd bootleg them and sell them locally, play them on the radio.
Okay.
And have local hits. So that's what they did with Hanky Panky. They found it in an old record bin and started playing it on the radio. And it entered the charts at #1. It was turned out, and they bootlegged it because they were getting such response, and they sold 80,000 copies in 10 days. True story. And so the record just suddenly, they couldn't keep it just in Pittsburgh. You know, suddenly it was getting played in all over Ohio and other places in Pennsylvania, and it just exploded out of Pittsburgh. And they, on the record label, Snap Records, it happened to say Snap Records, Niles, Michigan. So they call the only place in Niles, Michigan that dealt in music, they looked at it, they called the record shop where I used to work. And Dickie, who was the woman who owned the place, said, yes, I'll track him down for you. And so I just happened to be home at that moment because the guy went belly up for not paying his taxes. And, you know, if the guy hadn't gone belly up, if the guy had paid his taxes on time, you and I wouldn't be talking tonight.
So
that's the truth. So I get a new manager in Pittsburgh and a new group because I couldn't put the old group back together that had made the record. So with the new group and a new manager, we went to New York a week later to sell Hanky Panky to a major label and have them take it nationally. So I get to New York now. I'm 18 years old. I'm a year out of high school. And so we go to all the record companies, and we get a yes from every company. We went to Columbia, we went to RCA, we went to Epic, we went to Lorry, we went to Kama Sutra, went to Atlantic, and just got a yes from everybody wanted the record because Pittsburgh was a major market, and we were number one.
Yeah.
So I just was flipped out that we were getting this kind of response. Everybody wanted the record. I went to, and the last place we took the record to was Roulette Records. Now, Roulette was a pretty decent label. They'd had a lot of hits, but it certainly wasn't one of the big corporate labels like CBS or Atlantic.
Sure.
And so we took it there and left it. And so I went to sleep that night feeling incredible, like we were probably going to be with Columbia or, you know, one of the major labels. The next day, about 10 o'clock in the morning, we start getting calls in our hotel room that all the labels that had said yes the day before suddenly are saying, Tom, we've thought it over and we just can't do it.
Oh, no.
I said, what are you talking about? I thought we had a deal. And finally, Jerry Wexler up at Atlantic told us the truth, that Morris Levy, the head of Roulette Records, had called all the other labels and backed them down. He called them up, and Jerry had his voice down. He said he called up the other labels and said, this is my freaking record. Back off.
Now, do you think
that's just how we talk?
Do you think the other labels at the time knew the funding behind Roulette? I mean, did they know the?
Of course, that was the whole point.
Okay. All right.
Yes, Morris scared them all to death. He just said, you know, back off. This is my record, and don't touch it. And they all did.
And you signed.
And of course, I'm going, what is going on? What's with Roulette Records? And of course, that is how we ended up on Roulette Records. You know, it was the first offer we couldn't refuse.
Of course.
And the point is that what we didn't realize and what I came to learn incrementally was that Roulette, in addition to being a functioning independent record label, and a pretty good one,
sure,
was also a front for the Genovese crime family in New York. You know, this is something we didn't know, of course, when we signed with them, and we learned it incrementally, and of course, that's how it all started. But they took Hanky Panky to number one, not only in America, but all over the world.
And
it ended up being the biggest record of the summer of '66.
And I think you've said this before publicly, but so good news, bad news. Bad news, Roulette. Good news is, did they not give you some creative freedom to kind of do what you want?
All kinds of it. I would have never had the kind of freedom at one of the other labels. I can tell you right now, if we'd have signed with one of the major corporate labels like Columbia or RCA, I can tell you right now, we would have immediately been turned over to an in-house A&R man. Yeah. And that's probably the last time anybody would have ever heard from us. The competition would have been awful, would have been terrible, and the Hanky Panky was such a fluky little record that we would have been lucky to have been a one-hit wonder.
Hey, Hanky Panky, before we get off that, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not, maybe it's urban legend, but in the studio, did you kind of make some of that up? or no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had heard Hanky Panky. This is when we originally recorded it back in late 63. I had heard another group do it out at a club that I went to, and I saw the reaction of the dancers in the club. I saw the fans of this group. I saw the reaction, and they just immediately put everybody on the dance floor. As soon as My Baby, the people hit the dance floor, and they must have played it a half a dozen times that night. And I turned to a friend of mine who was in the group. I said, we got to do this record. But all we could remember was My Baby Does the Hanky Panky. And so the rest of it, I saw her walking down the line and all that stuff. We just made up as we did the record.
God, I don't believe
it. Turns out that we went back to the record shop and tried to find out more about it. Well, it turns out that Hanky Panky was the flip side of a record by the Raindrops called That Boy John. And it was Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich who wrote all of Phil Spector's stuff. Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich were two of the biggest songwriters. It was a man and his wife, a songwriting team, Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich. And they had written Hanky Panky as just kind of a throwaway record to go on the flip side of That Boy John. They put out records called the Raindrops.
Shows you what a record company knows about music, right?
Right. So, long story short, they when President Kennedy was killed, it was a song about JFK when he was living, about John Kennedy, That Boy John. And when he was killed, they immediately took the record off the market, and of course the B-side went with it. And so it was really obscure, and I just happened to hear this other band doing it, or we would have never known about that record.
Something else had a baby, it'd kind of be like, that doesn't matter. So we play throwbacks. I should have just led with that. And one of those that I've always loved is something that I think you wrote but gave away. Tighter and Tighter, true story?
Oh, yeah, that was much later. That was by 1970. Well, yes. We were taking a break off the road, and I began producing other groups. This is several years later. And Alive and Kickin' was a group that had been after me to produce them for a long time. Their manager was a good friend with my wife. And I went out to see him one night in Brooklyn, and they were good. And it was a guy and a girl singing lead, and the group. They covered a lot of stuff, and they had a lot of original tunes. And they were just a real good group. And but I kind of put it in the back of my mind and hadn't thought of them for a while. Well, when I was on a vacation from the Shondells. I was basically, we were just kind of recuperating from all these years on the road.
Sure.
And I went in, I had written this song with Bob King called Tighter, Tighter, and I was going to do it myself. And I went in and we did the track and the music track, and I sang, and I just didn't like the way I sounded on the record. It just, it was just one of those things that...
Yeah, it wasn't a good fit.
My voice just didn't work with this track. And I thought of Alive and Kickin', and I said, let me get these kids on there and see how they did. They came in, and they did it great. So on top of my music track that I had already recorded, I put their guitar player and their keyboard player and a couple of parts that they ad-libbed, and I put on them Peppy, the male singer, and Sandy, the female singer. And I sort of rewrote it as a duet. They did a beautiful job of it. And I said, that sounds like a hit record.
shit I can't let go. No, no, no. Hold on. I'm just a little bit tired now, baby. A woman who touched my soul now. Wanna talk to let go now. Hold on, baby, just a little bit tired.
And I took it back to Morris. I played it, and he loved it. And they put it out, and the thing went #1.
No kidding.
And it was the first record that I had produced outside of Tommy James and the Shondells.
Your own music. You in your career, you convert to Christianity. It's influenced your songwriting, probably your music. Talk to me. Your life. Talk to me about Revelations, and I'm sure a billion people have asked you about the song Crystal Blue Persuasion, but those two things go hand in hand, do they not?
They sure do. And so does Sweet Cherry Wine. Sweet Cherry Wine is the blood of Jesus, and Crystal Blue Persuasion is about becoming a Christian. So, and it's just, I didn't think anything of it. The singles were just singles to me were sort of like snapshots of where you're at any given moment, and just where you're at as a person. And so those two songs in particular meant a great deal to me. But I never thought nobody was trying to be politically correct back in those days, and so I had no problem at all just expressing my spiritual feelings, and I was very glad to be able to do that.
Look over yonder. What do you see? The sun is rising, most definitely. A new day is coming. Ooh, people are changing. Ain't it beautiful? Ooh, crystal blue persuasion. See the light. Love is the answer. Ooh, and that's alright. So don't you give up now. Ooh, so easy to find. Just look to your soul. Look to your soul. Open your mind. Crystal blue persuasion. It's a new vibration. Crystal blue persuasion. Crystal blue persuasion. Maybe tomorrow, when he looks down on every green field, in every town, all of his children, in every nation, there'll be peace and good brotherhood. Crystal blue persuasion. Crystal blue persuasion. Crystal blue persuasion.
And then in my show, my road show, concert show, I'm able to talk about it a little bit, and people dig it.
That song reached, I'm thinking here, number 2, I believe, in the Hot 100. And back then, there were people that thought that the phrase, "it's a new vibration," might have been a drug reference. Yes?
Right. Well, Crystal Blue, too, they used it on the show Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah.
And when they were doing crystal meth, and I wanted to say, no, that's not what I was talking about.
That and Badfinger's Baby Blue, same thing. Hey, was there a moment, so you're 18, I mean, you've lived more life by 20 than most people do their whole life. Was there a moment in your career when you just thought, you know what, I think I made it?
Yes, there really was. I remember vividly in 1967 playing in Atlantic City, New Jersey, at Steel Pier. And on the side of Steel Pier, they had these big 40-foot letters to the names of the performers. And Ricky Nelson and I were working together at Steel Pier. He was doing the auditorium, and I was doing the end of the pier, the big, what am I trying to say? The end with the big dome,
sure.
The big domed stage. And I remember I took a limo down to Atlantic City from New York, and I looked up as Steel Pier was on the horizon and then getting closer and closer, the 40-foot letters, Ricky Nelson and Tommy James. And I said, by God,
I mean,
this is a moment. I got to just look at this for a second, because he had been one of my heroes since I was a little kid, and one of my music heroes. And that was a moment that really sunk in. I'll never forget that instant that I saw that sign.
Well, and to be able to absorb that and still be grounded at that young age is a whole different story, bud.
Well, true enough. But, because I was always in charge of our group and our career. And I had very little help from the record company. Not that I really wanted it, but I mean, I was given tremendous freedom to call the shots, to pick the records, to put my own production team together. I would have never been allowed to do all that at, say, Columbia Records.
All right.
Not in a million years. And at Roulette, they actually needed us and allowed me to do what they really couldn't do, which was make hit records for AM radio and to write songs and to, just do my thing. And they let me do it. And getting paid, of course, was always an issue.
Oh, of course.
Crime doesn't pay, But they gave me freedom with the budgets. I mean, they allowed me to spend money I needed to spend on the musicians and on the production and the studio. And so I was given tremendous freedom, and I really appreciated that, because I know that in the end that allowed us to have the longevity that we had, because I was left alone and we were allowed to sort of morph into whatever we could become.
That's not only really rare, but to your point, was probably everything back then.
It was virtually unheard of.
Yeah.
Because as soon as a group would sign with a label, they assumed that the group knew very little and that the record company had all the answers. So the record company would kind of take over. In our case, they allowed me to make decisions for the group, and I was very, very grateful for that. As a result, too, I learned my craft. I learned everything from songwriting to engineering to how the records are pressed, how they're distributed. Got to know the promotion guys. I got to, it was sort of like the record shop was the beginning of my education, and Roulette Records was the finishing of my education. And so I got to know every aspect of the record business.
Maybe it's the engineering, the sort of sound part, the practical on stage, but from a sound perspective, at least to me, I felt like Crimson and Clover music. I mean, I think the process of doing that, I'll use the word excruciating. That's not the right word, but you took a lot of chances musically with that. Is that correct?
I did, and also it was such a drastic style change for us that anything could have happened. It ended up being the biggest single record we ever did, and gave me the second half of our career. But honestly, what had happened at that moment, after Mony Mony and Do Something to Me, we were sort of, I began producing the group myself.
Right.
Rather than, my producers up to that time had been Bo Gentry and Richie Cordell, that I brought over from Kama Sutra Records. And they wrote and produced, and I got involved with a lot of it. I learned a lot from them. And then gradually, with Mony Mony, I began producing the group. Well, Crimson and Clover was really where I did it all by myself, where I didn't have any help and I didn't have anybody producing with me, and except the group. And so Crimson and Clover was just strategically so important to us. Like I said, it was a tremendous style change. And at that moment, FM radio was playing rock. Up until then, up until 68, FM radio really didn't play anything but jazz and classical music. They were not playing rock and roll. And all of a sudden, in 68, FM radio began playing rock and roll in stereo. So it wasn't just mono, AM records anymore. It was stereo, and you had to sound right, and you had to, it was very, the audience was changing too. I remember going out on the road in 68, and we were on the Hubert Humphrey campaign. Yeah. The vice president was running for president and asked us if we would appear with him on the road in the campaigns.
I remember.
And when we left in August on the campaign, the biggest acts were the Rascals, Gary Puckett, the Buckinghams, the Association, all singles acts. When we got home 90 days later, it was all albums. It was Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Led Zeppelin, and on and on and on, Joe Cocker, Neil Young. And we realized at that moment that if we couldn't sell albums at Roulette, because at that point we basically only sold singles, and the albums kind of came along, for the ride. But if we can't start selling albums, our career could have been over right then. And we just happened to be working on a little tune called Crimson and Clover, which fit into this new genre of albums really nicely. And, the Crimson and Clover album, when we released it, started selling like albums should. Started selling. Ended up at number one on the album chart. Now, we had never done that before. And Crimson and Clover, the record, the single, was getting played on both AM and FM
That's huge.
stations. In fact, we had to go in and make a long version of Crimson and Clover from the short version. Maybe, usually it's the other way around, where you had a long version, you had to edit it down to a short version for AM radio. Well, we had to do just the opposite. We had to take this mono short version and turn it into a long stereo version, which we did. And by the way, we made the whole record in 5 hours.
No, you didn't.
Start to finish, 5 hours. It was the shortest record we made and ended up being the biggest selling record we ever had.
I'm a huge believer in a number of things, kind of like you, I suppose. But life's rear view mirrors are wonderful things. Life's moments when they're happening, you're like, maybe not such a big deal. And then down the road, as you say,
oh yeah,
Crimson Clover gave you the whole second half of your career.
It did. It really did.
And you didn't know that.
Let me tell you one other quick Crimson story. The night we finished Crimson and Clover, I did a quick rough mix. We weren't supposed to mix it till the following week, so I just mixed this thing almost with my elbows. It was just a work tape, and it was a rough 7.5-inch tape of Crimson and Clover, just to memorize it and think of the next parts I wanted to put on it and how I want to mix it. And so I stuck it away in my briefcase. And I took it to Chicago the next day I'd listened to it on my own little tape recorder. And I took it to Chicago, and while I was doing a concert in Chicago the following day, and I just happened to take it up to WLS. John Rook, who was the program director of LS, was a good friend of mine, and he broke a bunch of my records. So I took it up there, and I told him what it was. This is just a work tape. What do you think it is? And I played it for him. He flipped over this rough mix, and he played it for Larry Lujak, who was a big jock in Chicago. He had just hired him. And Larry Lujak comes in. He says, Larry, listen to this. And he plays the tape again. And as he's playing the tape, he turns on another machine, and he's taping my tape. I had no idea. And so I said, well, I'm glad you like it, and we'll have it done in a week or so, and I'll send it to you. I go down into the car that is going to take me to
don't tell me he's playing it on the radio.
And all I hear, as I'm getting into the car, I hear, world exclusive on Channel 89. What? He's playing the rough mix.
Oh.
He's playing the damn rough mix. And I couldn't believe it. And, what am I going to do? And I would get back to roulette. And he is playing it every hour. And he's playing it like it's the record. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Chicago radio.
LS, CFL,
WCFL, Jim Stagg, who's the program director over there, was so infuriated that I gave him the exclusive because they were bumping heads, 250,000 watters. You know? And so I get back to roulette Monday morning, and Morris comes down and goes, what the hell did you do? And there was a death wreath of flowers from Jim Stagg on the death of Tommy James at WCFL radio.
No.
And this thing was 5 feet across. And it was a funeral wreath. And so I'll go, oh, my God. And Red Schwartz, the promotion man, called. They were going to do a whole thing on Crimson and Clover. They were going to do a big release. And so Red Schwartz calls up John Rook. He says, what did you do? It's a rough mix. And Tommy's got all kinds of plans for that. And he says, Jim Stagg's going to have to play it. I'm playing it every 20 minutes. He played the damn thing every 20 minutes for about, 4 or 5 days. Anyway, he broke the record. But the point is, I had to release the rough mix.
Thanks, Uncle Larry.
The record you and I all know as Crimson and Clover is a 7.5 rough mix.
Now I don't hardly know her, but I think I could love her. Crimson and Clover.
I never got to mix the record.
How different do you think it would have been, and what would the outcome have been?
I would have probably screwed it up.
Oh, well,
That's probably God's way of saying, you're done, kid.
You know, go with your instincts the first time, right?
Yes. And I would have probably had too much echo and too many effects. So but the Crimson and Clover is my rough mix that I mixed with my elbows the night before.
That's a fascinating
so we had to release it. And it ended up being the biggest record I ever had.
I'm gonna jump ahead here just a couple more things I want to talk about, and I'll get back to your evening. Let's talk for a moment about your autobiography, Me, the Mob, and the Music. It's an inside look, of course, during your time at Roulette Records and the Mob that was part of the label. Little did you know, of course, you were playing roulette with your life at the time. How did you navigate those dangers? I mean, at some point you had to know, right?
Yes, I gradually, but not at first. I learned it, gradually, who I was dealing with. Well, basically, I realized, I'd meet somebody up in Morris's office, and a week later I'd see him on the TV news, in handcuffs. They, doing a perp walk out of a warehouse in New Jersey for some damn thing. And I say, isn't that the guy we just met up at Roulette? And in Morris's office, and yeah. Well, this kept happening, and I finally realized, and I read up on it of who these people were, and I basically they were with they were with the crime family, the Genovese crime family, and in fact, Tommy Eberle, was Morris's partner. Tommy Eberle ended up being the godfather of the Genovese family when Vito Genovese died in prison on Valentine's Day in '69. But they were coming up all the time to roulette, and I'd see them on the TV news. These were, for real gangsters. And Morris, of course, was too. He was Jewish, so he wouldn't have been allowed to have been a made mob member, but he was an associate, they called it, and he was every bit as dark as the rest of them. And so it was a crazy relationship, but we had respect for each other, and it was one of the damnedest relationships I've ever been in, but yet, if it hadn't have been, every time I go to say something really nasty about Morris Levy and Roulette Records, I gotta, step back, because if it wasn't for Morris Levy and Roulette, there wouldn't have been a Tommy James and the Shondells. Oh, yeah? And that is the truth. So, it's just a multi-layered craziness. And so I wrote a book about it. And it's called Me, the Mob, and the Music, and it's been out for several years, and it's being made into a movie. And essentially, the story is about, it's an autobiography with about 3/4 of it devoted to this very scary, sometimes scary, but very tumultuous and crazy relationship that I had with this mobbed-up record label. And I got to tell the story, and I told it as accurately as I could. And we finished it. But when we started the book, I was a little concerned, to be frank about it. Martin Fitzpatrick, who was my road manager and my co-writer on the book, we were going to call it Crimson and Clover. We were going to talk about making hits, and it was, I was going to steer clear of the roulette stuff. And we were just going to talk about music. And we got about a third of the way into it and realized that if we don't tell the roulette story, we're just cheating ourselves and everybody else, because that really is the story.
Sure.
We worked on it, and basically when the last of the roulette regulars, as I called them, passed away, was Vinny the Chin Gigante, who was up there constantly, died. I felt like we could finish it, and we did. And as soon as we finished it, we got a deal with Simon & Schuster and went right with it. And shortly after that, we got calls for the movies and the Broadway show. So, and both are going to be done. Barbara DeFina is producing the show. She produced Goodfellas and Casino with Martin Scorsese. Wow. And The Grifters, and she just has an amazing string of hit movies. Hugo a few years ago with Martin Scorsese, and so we're very proud that she's going to do our movie, and it's going to be directed by Kathleen Marshall, and the screenplay is written by Matthew Stone. So it really, they're in the casting phase right now.
Didn't COVID kind of slow that down a little bit?
COVID really, yes, it did, for 3 years almost. COVID, and then the writer's strike was right after that. So Hollywood was pretty much shut down. It's now up and running again, and a little slower than usual, and things have really changed now. A lot of movies now are being made in series, like a limited series. Netflix is producing its own, and all of the big platforms that are streaming are now making their own movies. quite remarkable. But at any rate, we're in the casting phase right now, and it's fun. I'm co-producing, and it's fun watching all this come together. It really is. I'm very honored and flattered.
Do you get to play yourself?
No.
Well,
No, I am much too old to be Tommy James.
No, you're not.
No, frankly, I get asked that a lot. If who's going to play me, and I really have to leave this to the young, hip casting directors. There's so many great young actors, but what really blows me away is how many young actors started out in rock bands. It's quite amazing. So many of the young actors know how to play guitar, know how to sing, and I think, Jamie Foxx, when he did the movie Ray,
yep,
really raised the bar, because he not only looked like Ray Charles, made himself look like Ray Charles, but he sounded like Ray Charles, and he could sing. So you can't lip sync anymore, and you can't get away with any of that. You got to have people who can really do the job. And so the great challenge, of course, is going to be to find somebody who plays guitar as badly as I do.
No, come on. Come on.
That's going to be tough.
Come on.
Well, anyway, so that's where we're at with that, and I'm very honored that it's being done.
Is there, and maybe stop me if this is a spoiler alert, or maybe this is like the pilot thing, maybe I just dreamt this, but is there a planned slower version of one of your hits toward the end of the movie? Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The very last song in the film is the ending, the end of the movie where Morris Levy dies. And I have this imaginary conversation with him that I've always wanted to have. And because the strange part about all this is I really cared about the guy. I mean, he was probably the most fascinating person I ever met. Used to love to watch him do business. And you never knew who was coming up to the record company. It could have been, a mobster or Cardinal Spellman. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
He knew everybody. And he was a fascinating character, a lot of charisma and everything. But he was every inch a mobster, too. Always chose the dark side. But so anyway, the last song is going to be a very new version of I Think We're Alone Now. And where, of course, it was, when we did it originally, it was just a pop love song and very poppy. And now this is slowed down. It's done acoustically with acoustic guitars. And it really is a tearjerker. And Morris passes away in the film, and we are alone. And it's the closing credits start to roll. And it's really a very solemn moment.
Children behave. That's what they say when we're together. And watch how you play. They don't understand. So we're running fast as we can. Holding on to each other's hand, trying to get away into the night. And you put your arms around me. We tumble to the ground. I think we're alone. There doesn't seem to be anyone around. I think we're alone now. The meaning of our hearts is the only sound. Look at the way we gotta hide what we're doing. would they say if they ever knew? So we're running as fast as we can, and we're holding on to each other's hand, trying to get away into the night. Then you put your arms around me, we tumble to the ground, and you say, I think we're alone now. There doesn't seem to be anyone around. I think we're alone now. The beating of our hearts is the only sound.
And I can't believe how the song works in this very...
Actually, now that I think about it, I think it's the perfect choice.
Yeah.
It just is.
And so anyway, we recorded it, and I put it on an album that we released in 2019, went top 20 for us, called Alive. And we just had a tremendous response to it on radio.
First of all, let me say thank you so much. I am beyond honored that you would spend an hour of your life with me. So
thank you.
Seriously, thank you so much. Having said that, if people want to spend more time with you, I would say Sirius XM Radio on Sundays.
Yeah, I'm on 60s Gold. That's channel 73 every Sunday from 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is our 7th year doing the radio show. And when they first came to me with it, I was a little scared. I had never worked that side of the microphone before. And as many interviews as I've done, I never did that side of the mic. So I just immediately started to love doing the show. And we've been doing it for 7 years now. We start our 8th year in February.
Is it a little like roulette? Do they kind of say, Tommy, do what you want?
Yes. It's amazing. Not only do I play the hits, but they want me to play my music, too. They want me to, at the top of the hour and at the top of each hour, and also whatever stories I want to get involved in it. And so it really is an amazing... I said, can't I go to jail for that? I said, nah, don't worry about it.
It's payola. You're paying yourself, right?
Yeah. So at any rate, yeah, it's and again, I'm so flattered and honored to have this. During COVID, it was such a great way to stay connected to the fans because we couldn't do concerts.
Ah, right. And you have what, a studio in your house there?
Well, I do, but I record in the studio where I make music over in. It's not far from my home. It's a couple of miles from my home.
Oh, perfect.
And so I have my usual engineer, and we have a great little crew. Carol is with me on the show.
Oh, even better, even better. She's
my manager.
And I read her bio, just the background with MCA, and
she's incredible.
She really is.
My manager, Carol Ross, who's also my lady, is an amazing talent. I mean, and she has done so much. She's been an actress. I mean, back in the day, she was an actress on Gunsmoke, on The Wild Wild West. She was one of the cast members of the first Cosby Show, where he was a teacher. She was one of the kids in class.
I had no idea.
She also was a dancer on Where the Action Is.
No, come on. Really?
Yeah, one of the action dancers. And she's just and then she got into the business world, and she became the head of publicity at MCA Records.
Yeah.
She handled Elton John. She handled Paul McCartney. Paul and Linda McCartney, and Billy Joel, and I mean the biggest names in the business.
Well, now she gets the biggest name in the business. She gets you.
Well,
See,
I'm not sure about that, but anyway, she has been my manager now for 38 years.
I will tell you that you've got a good one. She's all business. I mean, I think when I first emailed her, I mean, she vetted me. And toward the end, she's the sweetest, nicest, most accommodating
She really is,
person ever.
and stands about 5 feet tall, and she's just an amazing person, and I love her.
Well, listen, I will let you go.
Well, thank you. God bless you, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for letting me get long-winded.